Hi, this is Bill Hitchcock. It's Pi Day on 2020, March 14th when I'm recording this. Anyways, what we're going to show you how to do is set up some work with some Dow Jones Industrial Average and SP 500 data. So I'm just going into eLearn. I'm scrolling through the course website down here to March 16th through the 22nd in 2020. And I've got three files here. There's the Dow Jones Industrial S&P 500 Moving Average data. Here's the task that we want to complete. And then finally down here is the actual assignment. So I'm going to click on the data file. And I can also click on the tasks just to show you what those look like. Let's see if we can get that to work. All right, so first here's the data file. And what we want to do is, like everything, we're going to go to File, Save As. Make sure we get a copy of this so we don't mess things up too badly. So I'm going to click on File, Save As. Go to Browse. Choose to where I want to sort my data. And I've got a folder set up. And I'm just going to save this in, I'll save it in homework. It's my stock indexed data March 22nd through the, March 2018 through 2020. And instead of version 1, I'll just try typing in something like online as I'm recording this. We'll save it. All right, so we're all set. So that's the first task that I had to do was just download it, save it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to group the two sheets together. So if I come down to the sheet tabs, you can either click on one, hold your shift key and click on the other one. That groups them. The other thing that you can do is you can right click on any sheet and then choose select all sheets and it will group both of those. Now be careful because anything that we type in here is going to show up on both the sheets. In this case, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to, as always, kind of start out, I'm going to go to page layout and I want to set up my headers and footers. So I go to the page layout tab, click on print titles. There's page, margins, header and footer, and sheet. So I'm going to choose the header and footer tab, go to custom header. In the left-hand section, I'll type in my name. In the center section, type in the course name. And if you like, go ahead, type in the semester that you're working on this. And then I'm going to tab over to the right section, type in date printed, and choose from these tools up here. There's the font, the page number, the pages. Here's the date according to the computers. So I'll hit OK. Go to custom footer. I want to put in the file name. Use the Excel button to get just the file name. Tab to the middle. Page 1 of, this is the number of pages, and there's going to be a lot of pages here because we have almost 2 years worth of data. And then I'll tab over and get the sheet name in and choose the sheet tab tool and hit OK. Looks pretty good. I'll hit preview just to kind of get a quick look at this, see how it's working. And it looks like I've got 22 pages worth of data, and at least I've got headers and footers in. So that's a good start. All right, next what I want to do is I want to shrink some of the font size down. So I'm going to highlight all my data. Excuse me. And in fact, if you go past a little bit, it's fine. I'm holding my Shift tab. Hit the End key once, END, down arrow, And I'm going to keep holding my shift with my left hand, cursor down a little bit further. Gives me kind of the outside borders here, and we've got plenty of extra cells highlighted. I'm going to go to Home, change my font to size 8. So that way it'll shrink everything up a little bit, give me some more room when I want to print this out. If I hold my control key down and hit Home, it goes back up to cell A1. Next thing I want to do is take my field names, and again, if I go a little bit past, it won't hurt anything. So I shift right arrow over to select those, click on bold, click on center, and wrap text. And I've got my field names all set up. All right, my next subtask, if you will, is I want to choose all the pricing information. So this is the opening price, the high price, the low during the day, the closing price, and then finally here's the adjusted close in case there's any dividends that get paid off by the various stocks. We'll include that. At this point, I can decide if I want to choose the volume or not. I'm not going to bother. So I'm holding my shift key. I'll hit end and down. And then I want to go a little bit farther down because I'm going to put in some summary statistics down here at the bottom. And on my Home tab, I'm just going to go to the number group and choose the comma format. So all my numbers are easy to read. I can see that. I'll go to the volume, do the same sort of thing, but with this one, I'm going to use a comma format, and then I'll decrease the decimal spaces because we really don't need any decimals for the volumes. All right, as we normally do, we're going to right-click on column A, insert a new column. I'm going to grab my first field name here, just so I can get the formatting of it. Type in SEQ for sequence. I'll use my volume, highlight a couple of those, copy them over here. And the reason I do that, again, is just so I have the formatting, because I want a comma with 0 decimal places. So for my sequence, it's 1, 2, highlight both those numbers, double click, and it will copy them all the way down for as many records as I have. So if I hit my end key once, turns on the end mode down here in the lower left hand corner, and down arrow, we can see that we've got 504 days worth of information from our spreadsheet. Right, at the bottom of the data, I want to skip one blank row, and I'll come down here, and I would like to compute out the average, the high, the low, the range, and I'm just going to abbreviate it, range being the high minus the low, the percent range, and that should be it. So again, you can see here the font size is a little bit different because I had inserted a new column. I'm just going to adjust that font size down to 8, clean that up a little bit. I don't need to get the average for the dates or anything like that, but I do want it for the opening price, the high, low, average, close, and so on. Notice that you can't tell what field is what yet. We'll fix that a little bit later, so just give me a minute. I'm going to click and type here equals average. Go up one cell, hold my shift key. I'm still holding the shift. I hit end and up, and it goes all the way up to the top, up to the word open. So it's C1 to C506. Hit enter. Do the same kind of thing, equals max to get the highs, equals min, cursor up a couple using the pointing method, shift, cursor up one more, hit the end key, up arrow, that goes all the way up to the top, hit enter. So there's my minimum. I've got all those numbers in there so far. Again, you might want to double check, just make sure that they're formatted with a comma format. That should work. The range we said was going to equal the high minus the low. And then the percent range is equal to how much it's changed divided by whatever the low was. So, oops, there we go. Let's try this again. Equals, point up to the change, the range in this case, divided by what my low price was. It gives me 0.43. I want to format that with a percent format, maybe increase it one space or one decimal, and that works pretty well. So I'll take all those cells, copy them for all the rest of the pricing information. And in fact, what I could also do is I'm going to copy this one more here for the volumes, and then for these volumes I want to get rid of the 2 decimal places, just to clean that up. All right, finally, for kind of the end of this second group of tasks, what I want to do is I'd like to know what dates the high happened and what the low happened. And there's a way that you can do this using a couple of nested functions. And what I'm going to do first is choose the match function. What the match function will do is it's going to look up in this list of, in this case actually what I want is the adjusted closing price. I want to find out when 33.86.15 occurred. So what I'll do is I'll type in equals match parenthesis. My lookup value is the adjusted closing price. Type in a comma. The array is this list of adjusted closing prices. So I'm going to click to the blank cell, hold my shift key, go up one, hit end and up. And in this case, I don't want to include the field name because I want just to choose the very top one there. The reason is that way, if it happened in row number 1, or when that sequence was on March 12th, 2018, it will return a 1. So I'll hit enter, and I find out that it's matching me up with 504, which I don't think is the right number. So here's what we got to do. We'll try this again. Equals match, parenthesis. I'm going to look up the value, type in a comma, go up to my numbers, end it up, and then finally I'm going to type in one more comma because there's an optional match type. So if I type in that comma, in this case what I want to do is do an exact match. I don't want it greater than, I want the exact match. So I'll type in a 0, parenthesis, hit enter, and it tells me that it's number 489. And indeed, if I come up to 489, there's my 33.86.15, which is the high for that. Right, if I copy this formula down, G508 is this number here. The range is going to be G2 to G506. So what I want to do is I want to put in a $sign in there, put a $sign in here, and then copy that down, and I find out that my low, the 2351, matches at record number 200. So let's try 2351. Let's scroll up here. See if I can find record number 200. Still going up. Getting close. Up. Went a little bit too far, sorry about that. Here we go, coming back down 199. There it is, record number 200, 2351.10. That was the low price. So let's go down to the bottom. So I've got the record numbers to tell me that. Let me save this before I mess things up too bad. All right, now what I want to do is I want to return the date for that. And the way I can do that is nest this function in with an index function. So if I type in right after the equal sign, index, parenthesis, and for the index, I want to look at an array and find a particular row. So my array is going to be these dates. Type in a comma, the row number is going to be what we match up. And I put a parenthesis at the end and hit enter. And it gives me 43,888, which is just a sequential number working off the dates from 1900. So I'm going to use my format painter and highlight this. And sure enough, it happened on February 19th, 2020. And here's February 19th, 2020 going across 3386.15. So I need to put in an absolute reference here, copy that down for the totals, and we've got it for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And since this is group, I've also got it there for the S&P 500. All right, so that's everything that I've done in task group number 2, A through H, and we've got that done. All right, let's take just a second here and look at what we've got to do. So for task number 3, what we're going to do is we're going to ungroup these sheets. So I'll right click on my sheet tab, choose ungroup sheets, hit Control Home to get up to the top, cursor down, and now these I have to do individually. So I'm going to choose View, Freeze Panes, and then I've got to go to S&P 500, Control Home, do the same sort of thing, go to cell A2, View, Freeze Panes, and Freeze Panes. You have to do it individually. Sorry, I wish I had a better solution, but I don't. Do the same kind of thing for part B. I'm going to do the rows to repeat, so that's the page layout tab. Choose Print Titles. Rows to repeat at the top. I want these field names to be repeated at the top. Hit OK. Go back to my Dow Jones Industrial Average. Same kind of thing. Page layout, print titles, rows to repeat at the top. Choose the field names in row 1. All right, since I'm on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, I want to sort this data by the adjusted close. So I'm going to come into that column, and either under Home and way at the right is Sort and Filter, or on the Data tab is also Sort and Filter. I want to just sort this in ascending order. So there's the low amount for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 21,792. That happened on December 24th, 2018. Let's go all the way to the bottom. End and down. And December 24th, 2018. There's our low amount. The high amount is February 12th, 2020. So that's 29,551. There's my high. That looks like I'm getting the right numbers there. And then we can check kind of on the S&P 500, do the same kind of thing. Let's just try sorting this, see what those numbers turn out to be for us. There's the low price, there's the high price. The high happened on the 19th of February instead of the 20th. And there we've got the high. The low actually worked out to be the same date on that Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2018. So I'll hit Control Home. We verified that. So that was task number, what was it? Letter C, I guess I had written in there. So let's just go back. Let's sort this back in date order. So either by sequence or by date. Do the same thing for my Dow Jones Industrial Average. You know, if I go to date and sort this, notice it sorts it in sequential order as well. All right, a couple other things that we want to do. The field names, I'm going to change these slightly. Instead of adjusted close here, I want to call this the Dow Jones Industrial Average. For the volume, I'll call it DJIA vol. And for the S&P 500, I'm going to change that one. S&P 500. Come over for the volume. S&P, oops, hang on. Try it again. S&P 500 vol to make them a bit more descriptive. And then finally, let's take all these columns, highlight them, adjust the column widths, click in between any of those letters, and that should adjust that. Let's try it here for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and just go between a couple of columns, and we've got that adjusted. And we can check and see, you know, here you can see the page break. It looks like I've still got a little bit of room, but not much left. We might have to flip the orientation shortly here. All right, so that's everything for task number 3. Task number 4, what I need to do is group the sheets back again. So before I do that, I'm just going to save. Right-click on the sheet tabs, select all the sheets. I want to add a 50-day, 100-day, and 200-day moving average, and also an index from the start. So what I'll do is I'm just going to copy one of these field names. So I've got all the formatting the same. So here's the 50-day, 100-day, 200-day in the index. Paste that in there. Just type in the new field names. 50-day, 100-day, 200-day, and we'll have the, hang on, IDX from start. And notice that my wrap text worked to kind of line that up. All right, so for the 50-day moving average, what I need to do is use an equal average function. But I can't do it until I'm 50 days into my data. So I've got to just scroll down here to day number 50. There it is. Type in equals average, parenthesis, come to the Dow Jones Industrial Average on the 50th day in my data set, shift and up. I don't want to include the field name there because G2 to G51 is actually 50 days. Hit enter, and I've got my number 24,410.81 cents. I'm going to go to home. I want to make sure that I've got that formatted the right way with a comma format. Double click on the fill handle. There's all my 50-day moving averages. And if I hit end and down, you can see I've gotten all the way down to the bottom here. So that one's all set. End and up. Let's come over for the 100-day. Again, can't do it until you have 100 days worth of data. So I'm going to scroll down here a bit. Equals average, parenthesis, come over to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, G101, hold your shift key, end and up. I'm still holding the shift, cursor down one cell, so I've got G2 to G101. Hit enter, format with a comma format, double click on the fill handle, my 100-day moving average is complete. Hit my page down key a couple of times, several times in fact, and I'm looking for day number 200 equals average up the Dow Jones Industrial Average for 200 days. I'm still holding the shift key and adjusting that so I don't include the field name. Hit enter, format it, double click on the fill handle, and we've got that. So if you want to see what this looks like on a chart, click on your 50-day field, hold your shift key, go over to 200, hit end and down. It goes until it starts the 50-day. Hit end and down one more time. It collects all that data. And let's go to insert. And I guess I can't do it because I've got my sheets grouped. So, sorry. But this is what you'd do if you had it individually. All right, let's hit Control Home. So I've got my moving averages all set. Finally, for this index from the start, what I want to do there is I want to find out how much has the Dow Jones Industrial Average changed on a relative basis from the first day of the year or the first day of my data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in an equal sign, reference the 25,178, divide that by itself. However, I'm going to hit my function F4 key a couple of times because I want to always reference cell G2. In other words, use that as my denominator. So I hit enter, I get the number 1. I need to format that with a comma format. And in fact, you could probably even increase the decimal 1. And then if we start copying this down a little bit, just to kind of show you, what these numbers mean is the 0.993, it means that the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped a little bit. It dropped a little over 1% on this second day. Then here it's 0.983. It's dropped about 2% from March 12th, 2018. So if you copy this all the way to the bottom, just double click on it, hit end and down, you'll see that on March 11th, 2020, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is actually 6.5% below where we started back in March of 2018. So we could do some things, we could, if you want to take a look at what the high and the low was, let's go ahead and grab that, copy this over here, and let's increase the decimal places. So at one point, the Dow was 17.4% higher, in other words, 117%, if you will, than what we started out in March of 2018. And at one point, it was only 86.6% of that starting date. So that's how you can kind of read that information. So that's my index from those dates. So let's see. I think that takes care of everything that I've got for task number 4. So for task 5, we've got to ungroup the sheets and do a couple other things. So I'm going to right-click here, ungroup the sheets. I want to save this file before I get too carried away. I'm going to go to the Dow Jones Industrial Average and start task number 5, where I ungroup the sheets, and I'm going to copy the Dow Jones Industrial Average sheet. So I'll copy that one, right-click on it, choose Move or Copy. I want to move this to the end, and I want to create a copy. Hit OK. Right-click on it, rename it. I'm going to call this Combo, short for combination of some Dow Jones Industrial Average and SP 500 data. Hit Control Home. I need to delete out some of this data because I really don't need it. I don't need the opening price. I don't need the high, the low, the close. I can delete all those columns. So I'll right-click on it, hit Delete. That's gone. I don't need the volume. I don't need the moving averages. So I'll right-click and delete those. We've got that. And then finally, this index from start, I'm going to just rename that and call it the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. And, if you want, you can even shrink up this column a little bit. And we're all pretty good there. All right. Now what I want to do is next to it is I want to get some SP 500 data. So I'm going to save my file just so I don't mess things up too badly. Go to the SP 500. I want to choose the SP 500 data, so I'll click on that field name, Shift and down. Keep holding my Shift. I might as well copy in some of this extra stuff here, the statistics that I had at the bottom. Hit Control C to copy it. And when I get to the combo sheet, I really want to put it in between these two columns here. So I could have inserted a column and then done it, but instead I'm going to try to right-click on here and choose Insert Copied Cells. And I want to shift everything in this column to the right. So let's hit OK. And cross my fingers. If I widen out this column, there's my S&P 500 data. That looks good. If I hit end and down, it looks like it put all the stuff in there to the right place. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen. That looks good. All right, I'm going to go back to the S&P 500. I can hit escape. I don't need to copy that anymore. But what I would like to do is take that index from the start for that one as well. And let's copy that. And let's put this on my combo sheet. Paste it here in column F. This one I'm going to call my S&P 500 IDX. And maybe we can shrink this up a little bit. Adjust my row height so I can read it. But then actually the formula got a little bit messed up, so I'm just going to redo the formula. Equals the S&P 500 D2 divided by the S&P 500 function F4 D2 divided by D $2. Hit enter, gives me the 1. Copy that down. We've got all that data here, and that looks pretty good. So actually it looks like the S&P 500 at one point was a little bit higher. It was 21.7 above what the low was, but it also was a little bit lower, 84.5%. So it looks like the S&P 500, you'd think that it wouldn't vary quite as much, but in this case it looks like it actually did. Let's hit Control Home. Save our work. That takes care of most of the stuff on option number 5 or task number 5, and that looks good. All right, finally for 6, we're getting close to the end. For 6, we want to start making some charts. So the first chart that I want to do is I want to compare the S&P 500 with the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Find out how they vary. So I'm going to hold my Shift key, cursor over one to the right, end and down to select all my data. I will click on Insert, go to a XY plot or a scatter plot, and choose the very first one. And we get kind of a not so beautiful chart, but that's all right. I'm going to take this, move the chart location as a new sheet. I'm going to call this thing my what do I want to call it? We'll just call it the Dow Jones Industrial Average versus S&P 500. So, chart's a little bit hard to read because of the scaling. So what I want to do is really, I'm interested to see, it looks like there's a fairly good correlation between these two. You know, here's my Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's the S&P 500 going up here. So let's right-click on this, format the axis, set the minimum to 2,000 and the maximum to 3,600, 3,500, somewhere in that range. All right, and that cleans things up. I'll do the same thing down here at the bottom. I want to try to right-click on my, let me see if I can select it. Drag this down. Right-click on this axis. I want to format the axis. Let's try setting this to 20,000. And then for the maximum, you can set it at either, leave it at 32. If you want to adjust it, you could try to, 30,000 or something and tab over. And there now I can really focus in on this data much better than what we had before. So I'll right-click on this, add a trend line, leave it as linear, scroll to the bottom. I want to display the R-squared value. I also want to, display the equation on the chart, and I also want to display the R-squared value. Let's see if I can click on that. Come on. There we go. Click on that. Hit my Home tab. Increase the font size so you can read it. And we've got that pretty well set up. So that's a good way to set up your charts. I'll let you kind of finish up everything for the last little bit about doing the performance. We've done that in the past, and hopefully this gives you some good ideas about completing all your tasks.